Good morning. How you doing today, Santa Barbara? Great. It's my privilege to welcome you to this celebration of the life of Larry Crandell. Welcome family, welcome friends, community members, even those who came to get a free McDonald's apple pie at the reception. I want you all to get ready for some humor this morning, because since we first began to plan this event, we knew that it should be a celebration. One where we could share a few stories, perhaps shed a few tears, but of course enjoy more than a few laughs. Larry once said, "In Santa Barbara, I feel like I have a friend around every corner." Well, there are a lot of corners in Santa Barbara, and a lot of you here today. Thank you for coming. This morning is about Larry, but of course, it's also really from, by, and for all of you. Although Larry would have liked this event to extend well into next week, we knew we'd need to fit a lot into a relatively short time, so we asked 5 friends of Larry's and ours to join the planning. They have helped us assemble a beautiful collection of voices to honor him, here in person and on the big screen. They've also provided for a video booth at the reception, courtesy of Life Chronicles, for any of you who'd like to record a Larry story to post on his website. And for good measure, and also completely in keeping with who Larry was, they've included a fundraiser for a scholarship in his name. We are deeply grateful to Kate Carter, Judy Weisbart, Joe Howell, Bill McFadgen, and Tom Parker for their creativity, wisdom, and hard work in putting this all together, all of which they did with abundant love for Larry and in his spirit of humor. If you enjoy the program today, my family and I thank you. If you don't, please speak with them. A little history. Lawrence Leith Crandell was born in the early 20s in Massachusetts. He moved to Newark in 1930, where he grew up during the Great Depression, his family on relief. He found a home at the YMCA, where he learned firsthand the benefits of philanthropy. At 18, he joined the Army Air Corps and fought in World War II as a member of the Greatest Generation. And in 1950, he married my mother, Marcella Novak, his wife of 58 years. After starting his career in the Arthur Murray dance business, he and Marcy moved out west, where he waltzed his way into real estate development and settled in Santa Barbara in 1959. Here, he set down his deepest roots, raising a family, playing noontime basketball and football, and finding his true calling and what he called psychic income in community work. It was here also that he had his second great love affair, this one with Santa Barbara itself, both the place and the people. To put it simply, Larry loved helping people, which he found myriad ways to do, and he also loved getting attention for it. And this combination reached a pinnacle for him when he became known as Mr. Santa Barbara, a title he treasured and, of course, promoted whenever he could. Larry had a long and extraordinary life, full of connections spiced with humor, and you're about to hear some marvelous glimpses of it. Before we take that trip down memory lane, as he would have called it, I'd like to share my perspective as his son, shaped over many years. It's a perspective my brother Stephen wrote about in his book, which you'll have a chance to pick up today. It's about the power of a parent's love. In Larry's case, his mother's. If there's a single seed, a single source of Larry's character, of his optimism, his joy in life, his love of people, and his desire to help others, it has to be his mother, Jane Rosenthal Crandell. More than any other person in his life, his mother created such a circle of love for him that his cup literally ran over for nearly a century, touching most of us in this room and throughout our city. Ultimately, in the beginning, the man who held so many of our hands learned how to do it from a master, his mom. Let's listen to how he tells it.
My name is Larry Crandell, and if I have to tell you that, then you must be new in town. Like everybody else, I was born a long time ago, in 1923. So I grew up, we used to stay in a state institution during the day while my mother worked. I had this selfless woman, 3 boys, 3, 6, and 9, and we walked 1.5 miles to school. And the 3-year-old got one hand for safety reasons. And I was the oldest, I was 9, and the 6-year-old and I alternated block. One block he'd hold her hand, the next block I would. And there was that kind of affection. I was brought up with a great deal of love in poverty, and I certainly wouldn't trade it to be little Lord Fauntleroy without the love. 1963, I lost my mother. His name was Jane. She was an exaggerator, never heard her complain. She would tell us we were better than we were. But she said, when you get to be 40, which was old in those days, this was 1935, you're going to look better for a 40-year-old than you do for a 12-year-old. And that turned out to be true. And now I'm twice 40, and the camera will show pretty much how stunning I am. The overriding great quality that she gave me was, I'm surprised when people don't like me. I'm really shocked when people don't admire me. I have the ability, you're getting some of it now, 2-dimensional admittedly, to reach out to people. And that's because she inculcated in me 2 feelings, many feelings, but 2 attitudes. One was that I was a very nice guy and likable. And the other was the biblical saying, I think it's misleading, it's more blessed to give than to receive. The real message I got was, it's more fun, it's more satisfying to give.
Ladies and gentlemen, our MCs for this morning, dear friends of Larry and of our families, Tom Parker, Bill McFadden, and Joe Howell.
First of all, welcome to the celebration of Larry's life. My story. About 20 years ago, I brought the Hutton Foundation here to Santa Barbara, and to no one's surprise, the very first call I got was from Larry Crandell. Well, I'd heard about Larry, so I was ready. So we had a lunch meeting. So we sat down. Before Larry could say a thing, I looked at him and said, Larry, I know how much you've done for this community. I understand. But for us to have a partnership, for you to get any grants, for us to do this together, you've got to let me speak 50% of the time. I don't know if you've ever seen Larry speechless. His eyes got big, his face went white. I will tell you that he later confessed to me that that was the hardest agreement he's ever had to try to uphold. So today, I will say, Larry, new agreement. You only get to speak 25% of the time today.
So it would be hard for any of you to think of any event with the combination of Larry Crandell and there wasn't an ask of some kind. So in keeping with that today, it is a fundraiser for a newly established Larry Crandell Scholarship. Several people have suggested the criteria: any high school student, male or female, who can shoot a 2-hand set shot. Very small pool, but today, and Stephen will explain at the conclusion how you can participate, but hope you enjoy the show, and remember, this is for the Larry Crandell Scholarship.
And also in keeping with Larry, we're charging speakers $1,000 a minute. So if they go over, we're counting on you to keep the timer.
That is the truth, by the way.
Why I work with eleemosynary activities, which is synonym for charitable, which an attorney, Joe Howell, taught me at the cost of approximately $500. I'll never forget her saying, because I have the same feeling, why in the world do people give me so much credit for doing the only thing in the world that I want to do? And that's true. What she did was much more important and much less fun than that which I do, but I carry that. I don't want the credit to stop. Someone said the sound of applause is the sweetest sound in the world, and I subscribe to that.
So Larry loved that word, eleemosynary, and I think it really fits him. I think he would describe himself, love big words, an eleemosynary event MC. And the way Larry defined that really was, he had 3 jobs at every event. First was to make people laugh a lot. Secondly, whatever the cause, whatever the purpose, to get people to open their hearts to that purpose. And the thing he loved and did best, close by getting them to open their wallets to that particular purpose. I've had so many conversations, several of you in the audience today, about your first encounter with Larry Crandell. Some people say when they first met him. Others have experiences like me, which was an encounter. Many, many years ago, United Way, every year after their fundraising campaign, would have a thank you lunch. And I learned later this was Larry's sort of first MC gig in town. So I attended, many of you have attended these. The drill was your name is called, you go up, you get a mug. Apparently, the last few years he did it, he would throw the mugs to people. I had no idea who Larry Crandell was. I sat there, my name was called. I walked up, about halfway up, he said, "Young man, stop. Turn around to the audience." And I did what he said. He then made fun of my tie. He made fun of my shirt. He then segued into a lawyer joke. And the only really embarrassing part of the day was I was laughing harder than anyone in the room. He was the funniest guy I'd ever heard. And mind you, everyone was laughing at me. And I think Larry had that ability as an MC. He made it look so simple, but he really prepared. He also had priorities as an MC. Priority number 1 is no surprise. That was to have maximum Larry time at the mic. Number 2 and 3 were interchangeable. Applause and laughter. If people were laughing or people were applauding, it was a good day. Number 4, he could tolerate in small doses. That was other people at the mic. Number 5, many of you have planned events with Larry. The one thing that was inexcusable was wasted time. He so valued every audience. It killed him when there was wasted time. So today, as you look at this event, it is classic Larry. Larry would give this 3 gold stars. Number 1, as you will see, there's going to be a lot of Larry. Number 2, the applause and the laughter, perhaps tears, that's your job today. 4th, some other people will speak, but there will be absolutely no wasted time, so enjoy the celebration of life.
I did a TV spot for Newshawk, and Bill McFadden, the owner, said, "Say anything you want." And I said, "Newshawk, that's N-O-O-Z, and I presume most of you can spell hawk." And he ran it over and over again. He found it kind of amusing. If you could be invisible, where would you go? So I said, I'd probably go to my own funeral. Nobody says mean things. People use hyperbole and exaggerate.
As he was for most of you, Larry was a great mentor to me. He was an early cheerleader of Newshawk, as you heard, even before the concept was hatched. He was in his early 80s at the time, and it amazed me that he got the concept, and even when online local news was a very pioneering notion. We shared an office at the incubator on Gutierrez Street, and he would often ask me for an update on what we were doing. And as I was describing our latest cockamamie scheme to make money, he would fidget and nod off and yawn very expressively. But it was a good reminder to sharpen the focus and get back to the point. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, we would be out together somewhere, and he'd be trying to impress a pretty waitress or Lenny Flay Blonde or Lois Capps, and he would recite almost word for word the conversation we had had, and then sell it as if it were his own idea. It was a privilege to get for me to spend so much time with him over the years, and he taught me 2 vital lessons, one of which I only realized after he had died. As you know, Santa Barbara is built entirely on relationships. Larry Crandell knew every thread of the fabric of this community. And I credit much of Noozhawk's early success to my having studied everything that he knew about those intricate connections, even if I only mastered a fraction of them. But the memory I will carry forward in my heart is an epiphany I've had just in the last few weeks as I've reflected on the relationship and the friendship that we've had. Other than the fact that I genuinely laughed at every one of his jokes and patiently endured every single story that I had heard 100 times before, I never understood why he had taken such an interest in me. I brought nothing to his table, yet he treated me like the guest of honor. And then just recently it struck me that that was the most important lesson that he could impart. Winning and success are great, but it's the people in our lives who really matter. Make those who can do nothing for us feel important and valued. The return on our investment is in the opportunity that affords, and that's what he was getting out of it. And let me tell you, whether you're giving that or receiving it, it's a great feeling. Thank you, Larry.
From my mother, I think I developed, in its lighter form, maybe a sentimentality. In its slightly deeper form, I think I feel ouch when I see somebody hurting. The greatest income you can get, one that isn't even taxable, is psychic income. In other words, those things that enhance the quality of life for others. It's either from the Bible or someplace that it's better to give than to receive. It's more blessed to give, but I think it's better. Once you have some of the material things in life, then it sounds so Pollyannish. And if someone who's watching this doesn't feel this, then it'll be Pollyannish. But for those who spend part of their cash, be it money, effort, ability to amuse crowds, whatever it is, by giving it away, it multiplies and comes back, not necessarily in dollars, but it comes back in what I call psychic income, or the satisfaction of improving the human condition.
By the way, I'm sitting here watching some of this for the first time, and I shouldn't be surprised. We're going to all be upstaged. Do you know that? I explained this 50% rule with Larry. What I didn't tell you was that over the next 20 years, when we actually talked to each other, because he knew he had to listen to me 50% of the time, we got pretty close. And I realized what a lot of you know too. This man he's a tremendous wit. He connects with the community. He is such a personality that these traits could have been successful anywhere and anything he did in life. So what did he choose? Seems like his destiny was Santa Barbara. His destiny was to make a difference in people's lives. Was it a success? I don't know. Look around. We've all been touched by Larry. Thousands more have been touched by Larry. I think his life is such a success. And I miss you, my brother.
Another example, in 1996, during the Olympics, they sent around the Olympic torch on a train. They visited dozens of cities, and Santa Barbara County was allowed to appoint 7 torchbearers for the county. I was one of the 7 selected, which was I was honored. Peter McDougall was selected, and president of City College, other worthwhile people. And so they gave me, I was at the time 73, they gave me the downhill route, which was Milpas, from near the top down to De La Guerra. 2 things happened to delight me. As I ran down, it was about 500 meters, and I trained, and I didn't know it, but I needed a bypass, but I didn't know it. As I ran down, I had 2 thoughts. One was, I'm carrying the flame that's lived for 100 years. The second thought was, if I weren't sucking wind, I'd enjoy this more. And one young man got up, and he said, and the thunderous applause, he said, now I know what it's like to be Larry Crandell. And I thought, that's his image of me? What a lucky, and I am other-oriented. Many people function internally, and they're nice to people, but they don't need people for validation, and I do.
The following quote brings to mind Larry and the effect he had on many of us and the greater Santa Barbara community. Some people come into our lives and quickly go. Some stay for a while, leave footprints on our hearts, and we are never, ever the same. I am confident that those footprints abound on the hearts of those of us here today and many more throughout the Santa Barbara community. All of us have benefited from Larry's deep caring, generosity, enthusiasm, and commitment to ensure needs in our community would be met, and having fun while doing so. Clearly, our Mr. Santa Barbara was unique, and the range of experiences that produced him so sensitively and effectively conveyed in Stephen Crandell's Silver Tongue, A Life of Larry Crandell, combined in an alchemy that yielded one of a kind. His loving mother, growing up with 2 brothers in Newark, New Jersey, heroic exploits as a bombardier in World War II, college and basketball at Syracuse University were early, powerful, and formative experiences about which most of us were unaware. However, one can easily see how they help to mold a person with unyielding optimism, deep appreciation for those who struggle to meet life's demands, and a capacity for sustaining the personal drive and determination to make things better. The depth of his caring was the fuel that ensured the range of service to others was never quite exhausted. And many of us in the beautiful community we share reap the benefits of that zeal. Education was a special focus for Larry, whether it was Santa Barbara City College, Westmont, UCSB, or a fine K-12 system. Larry knew our institutions were often the key to hopes and aspirations of young people being fulfilled. His service through education, through the positive energy he readily brought to a multitude of fundraising events, the athletic roundtable, and just about any other way in which he could, he helped, and that help was unmatched. Larry would be there, and always his presence produced greater enthusiasm and the confidence that what was being attempted would be achieved. His skills at effecting collaboration helped to ensure that the town versus gown separation would not be a reality in our community, that the synergy of working together would yield benefits for both entities of which we could be proud. However, for me, it was personal experiences with Larry and his working on behalf of United Way, having the privilege of supporting Olympics by carrying that special torch, seeing scholarships being generated to help students fulfill their dreams, and a multitude of other activities. Nothing was impossible if Larry was there. And always there would be many, many smiles, laughter, and the spirit and reality of success that comes from such special collaboration. Stephen's book includes a response to a question, and you saw the question on video. If you had a choice of doing anything, what would that be? And his answer? He would attend his own funeral. None of us can be certain what awaits, but just in case Larry might be somewhere here listening, I will say to him, thank you, Larry, for bringing so much joy to many of us, for teaching us that it's okay to have a lot of fun while doing serious work. And know that all you have done to make my life much better for so many continues to be influenced by your legacy of dedication to our community. We love and respect you for who you have been and what you have meant to us.
It doesn't get any better than this, and it's all for you. As for me, I would walk across this country from Washington, D.C. to be here tonight. In fact, I did. Just to be able to say, you are the best. This community adores you. I adore you. You're our hero.
Long overdue, well deserved.
Well, I don't know after that, but it is such a pleasure to follow our local hero, Peter McDougall, to this podium. And real honor for me to be asked by the family, a lot of whom are in the front rows, to speak and share about your father, grandfather, and I even may have seen a great one or two. You know, I can't help but go back to a friendship between my husband, Walter, and Larry Crandell, because that was going way back, long before one was known as Mr. Santa Barbara, and the other a college professor who became a member of Congress. No, they struck up an immediate friendship when they first met, simply because they liked each other. I imagine there are more than a few of us here today who've had that same experience with Larry. He was very easy to like. They had each, Walter and Larry, come from humble beginnings, and they enjoyed an easy banter and a quick repartee, although Walter's jokes were way cornier than Larry's. But neither cared much for partisan politics either, which is something I soon learned to appreciate. And each valued the importance of family and were so enormously proud of their kids and their accomplishments. In fact, for a few years at Santa Barbara High School, we could count on seeing each other at back-to-school nights. My own relationship with Larry Crandell began with his realization that our names began with the same initials, LC. That was always our conversation starter. But along the way of serving as the representative to the United States Congress from the Central Coast of California, I discovered a very pleasant part of my job, which was to provide certificates of appreciation and recognition to various outstanding individuals and or community organization. And if the occasion included any kind of celebration, invariably, you know who the MC would be. That would be Larry Crandell. And I soon discovered that if you were responsible for organizing such an event, trying to raise money for your nonprofit, your organization, it was a real mark of distinction to get Larry Crandell to be the MC, because then you could advertise as such, and the event would be guaranteed success. Such had become the draw and eventually the legacy of Larry Crandell. It is certainly not a coincidence that our achievement as a community with the greatest number of nonprofits per capita in the country is connected to Larry Crandall's life, with its singular achievement as a fundraiser par excellence. Nobody could do this like Larry. It is a well-known fact that Larry Crandall, by himself, raised millions of dollars for Santa Barbara's worthy projects. What an achievement in a lifetime. The Larry Crandall Nonprofit Center on Chapala Street is such a worthy legacy to his tireless efforts. And you know, he did this night after night, getting dressed up in his tuxedo, showing up an event with his polished shoes and his ready smile, ready to raise funds for some project that we are all the beneficiaries of. And I also discovered firsthand never to interrupt or intrude upon this MC while he was doing his monologue. Have any of you had that experience? Facing the sharp retort, "If you don't mind, I work alone." We all recognize that, don't we? Larry Crandall truly was and will forever be in the hearts of all of us. Forever, Mr. Santa Barbara. But my abiding image harkens back to the earlier era, and stemming from their younger years when Larry and Marcy first met as Arthur Murray dance instructors. I will cherish forever my memory, have you had one too, of seeing the two of them gliding across a ballroom floor. He in his impeccable tuxedo, and she in a flowing ball gown, as graceful and elegant a couple as we shall ever see. And today, in my mind's eye and in my heart, they are dancing once again. Thank you very much.
So now I have a tendency to exaggerate a little how well I played. But there was one incident. We played Cornell Ivy League school, was 50 miles away, academically superior, but not athletically superior. And we played in a place that's still up called Barton Hall. And the coach took me out, called a timeout and said, "I'm going to have Larry go into the pivot, that is into the post under the basket, and throw the ball into him, and Larry throw up a hook shot." It was less than a minute to go. I said, "Right." Any play that ended with me shooting fitted my personality. So I got in there, and those sons of gun kept running around doing what is called a mill, and they didn't throw it into me. So I said, "The hell with this." So I got out into the mill. I got the ball. I was really jazzed. And I turned and shot the ball. The score was tied. The ball was perfectly on line for the basket. Flew over the basket, over the backboard, and into the crowd. And some jokester yelled, "Shut the windows." Another one story in how I failed my way to success. But I got to play at Madison Square Garden, and I got to play as a student. And most of the pretty girls, in spite of the fact that I was kind of a hero, they didn't warm up to me. They turned me down. But I have had the last laugh. They're all old ladies now. I got an office in the 100 block of Carrillo, because that's where the recreation gym was. And I played till I had a heart attack when I was 62. And they let me come back and play till I was 64 because one of the players was my doctor, Tony Alina. And after every game, he'd take out the stethoscope. And men are not very kind, as Russ can tell you, when they're competing. And between games, Tony'd take out the stethoscope and they'd yell, "Greg that cadaver off the court. That old man's holding up the game." But I was probably the only guy who had played at the college level, and there were still remnants. As a matter of fact, I still get better every year in my mind.
You know, we started the Crandell Cronies under Larry Crandell's leadership about 25 years ago. It's an informal group of guys that get together simply to be a part of Larry Crandell and his life. And the real purpose of the group is to glean the wisdom, the wit, the charm of Larry Crandell. We all meet at the Coral Casino on Saturday mornings at 6:30. We have a vigorous workout with Larry Crandell leading us. He holds court. Then we go in the jacuzzi, the steam, and have breakfast with Larry Crandell. And Larry's enjoyed it, but I think you'll find that each of us have been the ones that have really benefited from this Crandell Cronies, just being a part of this amazing man.
He would ask people questions. I brought a number of people to Crandell's Cronies, and he would find a way to get somebody talking about their life, and all of a sudden they'd feel like Larry was their best friend, and his responses would be very timely, very wise, and humorous at the same time, no doubt about it. But heck of a guy, Larry Crandell.
Probably my first impression of Larry is still one of the funniest and one of my best. I had just become the head football coach at Carpinteria High School, and on a Monday, I took a couple of my football players to the athletic roundtable at Harry's Plaza Cafe. Larry was the president of the athletic roundtable at the time, and I was taken up towards the front of the table because I'd never met him, to be introduced. And he runs right over and he sticks out his hand. And he says, "Hi, I'm Larry Crandell. It's really nice to meet you." He said, "You must be the Mike Warren, the new football coach at Carpinteria High School." I said, "Yes, I am." And I thought, geez, this is really impressive. A guy, of his stature and the president of the organization coming over to shake hands with me immediately. And the next words out of his mouth were, "You must have keys to the gym." Because, everybody's laughing that knows him. He played in a pickup basketball game or a pickup touch football game virtually every day of his life. So for every Sunday for the 4 years that I was at Carpinteria High School, that game was in the Carpinteria High School gym.
Well, I have the distinct pleasure of knowing Larry probably 40, 45 years, mostly through the Coral Casino. And I got to see Larry naked in the steam room every day for at least the last 30 years. So, and in that steam room, he imparted incredible wisdom and stories, and he was a great friend. And I feel very blessed because for the last 10 years or so, I enjoyed lunch with him almost every week, or when I was in town and when he was around. And he just became kind of a father figure to me, and just imparted his incredible wisdom, his incredible humor, his joy for life. The thing I was amazed about Larry, no matter what the situation was, I'd say, "How you doing today?" "I'm great." He was always happy, always excited, and just thrilled about life. And he loved Santa Barbara. He loved this community. And I just found him to be an absolute treasure.
Oh, wow. Larry was, I'm happy to say, was a fan of our show. And so he'd often call in. And what was it he'd always say, Gary?
He would say, "Gary, Casford, Gary, my favorite people." Now, bear in mind, I had only met him a couple of times, but he made you feel like he was the best friend in the world. He was one of a kind. He really was.
He was. I was going to say, one of our colleagues, Bill Peso, told this story that when he first came to Santa Barbara, he met Larry at an event, and Larry told him he was the mayor, and Bill just thought he was. And Bill said for the longest time, "I thought Larry Crandell was the mayor." I also just want to say that I'm sure it wasn't always easy sharing Larry with the community, to the family, and so to Michael and Stephen and Leslie and Larry Jr., thank you for sharing your father.
I was at the News Press, and my first week at the job, my assistant fields a call from this guy, Larry Crandell, who I didn't know, of course, and he invites me to a luncheon at the Channel Cities Club. And so I was accepting anything to get out in the community, so I said sure, and then because of my own failings, I got directions wrong. I ended up arriving about an hour late. So I thought, well, okay, I knew it was a bit large luncheon, a couple hundred people, so I'll just sneak in the back, wait till it's over, and then go up and apologize to this fella, which was folly because I didn't know Larry. So I do get there about an hour late, get in the back. Speaker had finished, Larry was giving wrap-up remarks, sees me come in, interrupts himself, and says, "Oh, You see the new publisher of the News Press has finally arrived. He must still be on East Coast time. You know, Steve, would you please come up here? We have a seat saved for you at the head table. And so he made me endure this walk of shame. You know, people are in hysterics, of course. And it was classic Larry, because, and this is the point I'd like to make, you know, if you're going to be friends with Larry, you had to have a very good sense of humor. And you could have no sense of self-importance, because he'd whip that out of you very quickly.
A woman came into the office the other day and said, "I've got a name for your office, Larry." I said, "What is it?" She said, "The Me Office." I said, "No, each photo reminds me of some delicious story." For example, so I applied for a job as an Arthur Murray dance teacher in Manhattan, at 43rd and Madison, because men teach women, so you have to know the women's part. And women teach men, so you have to know the man's part. This was closed dancing, the samba, rumba, tango, and all that. And 2 girls went up to the training class teacher and said, "If we have to leave Mr. Crandell, we're quitting," because I was such a big ox. But I finally learned to dance. But I was fascinated by this woman who looked like, a little like, even now she looks like a younger Katharine Hepburn or an older Ally McGraw. And in those days, it's hard to believe, I was conceited. I went from being very modest to quite conceited. And I walked up to her, and we were required to call people by their last name. It was a glamorous place with mirrors so you could demonstrate. And we dressed up every day. And I said, "Miss Novak, how would you like to go to Walgreens for a lemon Coke?" She always had her nose in a book. I found out later why. She looked up, said, "No, thank you," and looked down. She was working on her doctorate at Columbia on a very special fellowship. And so I asked her again and again, and she finally relented, and we finally went out for a diet. I wasn't drinking diet in those days, but a lemon Coke. And so she finally had mercy on me, and she married me. A fellow named Arthur Murray became a nationally known, and he decided to do a television show, and it was called the Arthur Murray Dance Party, and his wife was the hostess. I loved it. It was showbiz. Then the best dancers were 5'6", 120, 130 pounds, and they had size 5 or 6. The men 5 or 6 size shoes. Well, these are my tightest, and they're 13s, and 2 of them were sick, so we did a mystery dance. And I had to be the lead dancer. And the dance was, put your little foot, put your little foot, put your little foot right here. And the camera zoomed down and caught my size 13s. And when Mr. Murray saw that, he said, "Oh my God, don't ever lift your feet off the floor again." So it reminds me, my mother had 10 malapropisms, which I understand to be screwing up of an adage, of an old saying. And I'd pay $1,000 for the 8 I've forgotten, but I'll tell you the 2 I remember. One, she'd say, "Lawrence, try to remember, many a joke is said in jest." I'd say, "No, Mom, the saying is, many a truth is said in jest. All jokes are said in jest." She said, "You'll understand when you get older." The other malaprop was, "Remember, Lawrence, cast your bread upon the waters and it'll come back toasted." And to this day, I don't remember what the real adage is. Cast your bread upon the waters and the blah, 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 blah. I'm going to look that up. So then I had some reason to come down and give a talk in early 60. And I had such a common experience. I kept looking for a flaw here. I kept looking for a flaw. And they drove me through the Lower East Side and said, "This is the least affluent section." I said, "That's better than the best section in Newark," because the houses were beautifully kept, the little gardens were, in those days, some of the houses were probably under 10,000. And everywhere I turned, there was beauty.
Good morning. Good morning. It's an honor to be here. That's the least I could say, especially as one of the few executive directors, knowing that he helped and supported and loved so many. In fact, we would always laugh about how he really was responsible for putting the social scene and the nonprofit scene together. I mean, we would talk about where if any group of 3 or more people were meeting and didn't have a philanthropy, a beneficiary, or an MC, it was a sin. He often would refer to me in public as his illegitimate son. And I think he probably did that with many of you, so this is kind of like a family reunion today. But one of the great things that we, others have shared also is, taught me one of the greatest lessons is celebrating other people's success, other people's awards, other people's recognitions. I love that about Larry. It's funny, sometimes as I got to be a little bit more well-known in the nonprofit community, so from time to time I'd get in the newspaper, I'd say, Larry, I got in the paper. And he'd be very happy for me, but he'd say, it's below the fold. And I said, okay, Larry, okay. And for the record, when the announcement in the paper of Larry passing, for the record, it was on the front page and it was above the fold. So he always had that. I think you've all heard the book Tuesdays with Morrie, where Mitch Albom befriends his aging college professor. Well, kind of like Bill, I too, when I was with CASA, was in the incubator. So every day I got to have my 30 minutes with Larry, and it was so special. Something that I could not have every day. And it was the kind of gifts that he would share with me. He taught me to play up a level so that no mountain was too great for me. I couldn't understand that. He just said, I'm not ready for that. He knew people were ready before they knew they were ready. And that's another gift that he gave not just to me but to others, to really not be afraid of the top of that mountain. There was something that Mitch, a quote of his that I really appreciate, and I think it brings it, and someone kind of mentioned it earlier today, and the quote reads, strangers are just family you have yet to come to know. And that's exactly who Larry was. In fact, where I got to, if some of you had an opportunity to dine with him, to lunch with him, to go to an event with him, this theater would be full of people, service people, and people who worked in the service industry. And you all know how much time and respect and love he gave to them. Even people who didn't have a master of our language, the English language. He made them feel so good, so special, and he would know something about their family, and he would share. It was, for me, knowing that, I truly felt as part of Santa Barbara, of the culture of Santa Barbara, and that's something that I'll always appreciate about Larry. There's one other person I've always said needs to be on my personal Mount Rushmore in philanthropy, and that is Michael Tobes. Larry is right next to Michael Tobes on that Mount Rushmore, although they're going to need a little bit more granite for the nose, but he is right there. No matter what age, no matter what your profession is, you need to believe in yourself. You need to have someone else believe in you. And Larry always believed in all of us. So thank you very much for letting me share today.
The forerunner for the United Way was called a community chest. And when I was 12, they asked me to speak. That's how I got into a speaking career. And when I finished, I was red in the face. I practiced. People applauded. And I didn't think, and still don't think, I could do this for a living. But the next time I had a chance to speak, I spoke. And it's just the last few years I've broken out of some of the restrictions of how will this look if I do that. And occasionally I say the wrong thing. I remember I introduced the Man of the Year in Goleta once, and I said, not only is he blessed, but apparently here's his beautiful wife, and they're apparently expecting a child. She was not expecting a child. And I got down on my knees. It was 20 years ago. The kid's grown. I don't think she's forgotten, nor has my sense of embarrassment because I'm constantly working to get people's favor. I raise money for charity. I'm an auctioneer. I try to make people laugh if I can. I'm not sure if funnier things happen to me than happen to other people. I've had so many experiences where hopefully the audience was amused, but I had a wonderful time. What's happened to me is I've become well known for being well known. Nobody could pinpoint what it is that I do. How much time have I got?
We got plenty of tape.
I've got an 8 o'clock mass tomorrow morning. Hi, my name is Larry Crandell, and I'm here at the famed Santa Barbara Biltmore to honor 4 people.
So it was about 3 or 4 months ago that I was at an event at Transition House, and I was up there doing my thing, and Larry was in the audience. And after the event was over, Larry called me over and he said, you know, Andrew, we have something in common, a few things in common, in fact. We're both young and good-looking and in the prime of our lives, and we love to hear the sound of our own voices. I feel like I nodded my head and agreed, and he said, but, you know, luckily for me, there are some differences, because when I'm up there and I've got the microphone, people donate money because they love me, and they want me to stay on stage. And I said, okay, I was waiting for it, and he said, when you get up there and you have the microphone, people donate money, but it's because they feel sorry for you, and they want you to get the hell off the stage. That's been my interaction with Larry over the last few years. These lessons that he puts in a joke, and he's taught so much to so many people. And I was thinking about his legacy, and they always say, you know, you're judged by the company that you keep while you're alive, and when you pass on, it's the legacy that you leave behind. And you know, Larry has so much legacy. I mean, his beautiful family here. You think about the scholarship or the buildings named after him. You think about the tens of thousands of people all over Santa Barbara, all over the Tri-Counties that he's impacted. But I think of all the things that he's left in his legacy, I think it's the fact that he's inspired so many people to get involved. To raise a paddle, to volunteer, to join a board, a committee, whatever it is, he has inspired all of us here in this room, and me especially. And that is a legacy that is so important because it will forever mean that Santa Barbara remembers how important it is to participate. So, I'm not sure if Larry's watching or is it invisible. I've heard a whole lot of theories here, conspiracy theories. But just in the event that he is, if we could all right now, one last time, because we're all here as an audience, raise your paddle up really, really high so he knows that we all, for one last time, are in this thing together. We are so incredibly lucky to have the Crandells share Larry with us so many evenings. We're so grateful to have Larry in our lives, but his legacy lives on far, far beyond this day. Thank you so much.
We go into the wild blue yonder, flying high into the sun. Ah! I like me, I think I'm grand. When I go to the movies, I hold my hand. I put my arm around my waist. When I get fresh, I slap my face. Imagine. It's good. My psychiatrist said it's good for me. Played on Wisconsin. A bunch of middle-aged men warming up while they played the famous fight song. No, same for old Notre Dame. Un poquito nada más. I'll try to play it straight there. I'll sing you my favorite song from 1912. Melody and quality of voice, there's too much of a fuss has been made over it. I can see that you are married, and you know I'm married too. But nobody knows that I know you, and nobody knows that you know me. If you care to, we'll have luncheon every day here just the same. But sweetheart, if you talk in your sleep, don't mention my name. That was considered racy. I have 4 numbers in reserve if you don't stop applauding. But Let's save it for 8 years from now.
He touched so many lives. He really did. I don't know anyone who's touched as many lives as Larry did. No, he changed my life completely. I am so grateful to that man. There are not enough words, or there just aren't the right words to express the gratitude and the compassion and the love and the affection and everything that I have for him. And I'm forever grateful. I love you, Larry.
He's just always been so much a part of my life in Santa Barbara. He was Mr. Santa Barbara to me. I remember one day I was having lunch with my mother, who was visiting, and several friends at the Montecito Inn, and he saw us and came over and talked to us. And of course, everybody was charmed by him. He left for a few minutes, came back with a rose for my mother. Oh. So from then on, she was his favorite, until she met you, of course. I like to call him the master of the nonprofit universe.
Yeah.
What an MC.
One of the expressions Larry loved to use about people is he's a legend in his own mind. You probably heard other people say that, but that was one of Larry's favorite expressions. He was so good at raising money because he kind of knew the community so well, and he knew what everyone could do or couldn't do, and he was very judicious about how he approached people. But he was a master fundraiser, both face-to-face and also at all of the auctions he handled over the years.
The thing that he did so well, but people think it was just for nonprofit organizations. It wasn't just for nonprofit organizations. It was for businesses, it was for people. He helped all facets of life. And I just have to admire him for doing something like that.
Well, when I think of Larry Crandell, it just makes me smile because he made people smile. And what a blessing to make people smile all the time. And not only did he make them smile, when they were smiling and laughing so hard, they were also reaching for their wallets and doing good things for the community and helping others. And he had that gift to be able to make those jokes, his great wit, flow with donations flowing along with his wit. I mean, how magical is that? So God bless you, Larry. Sure love you and sure miss you. See you on the other side.
Larry Crandell was one of the first people I met when Mary and I first moved here from Minneapolis in 1987. I had heard about a now legendary basketball game that was held on Sunday mornings, a pickup game, and had a chance to be invited to join in. I remember meeting that first Sunday Stan Hatch and Chuck Schlosser and Marv Bauer, Mike Macy, and Tony Alina, and others. I remember quite well going home that first Sunday and telling Mary about this amazing man I had met. He was 63 years old. He had played basketball at Syracuse University. He had a two-hand set shot, and remarkably, more of his shots went in than he missed. He joined in the trash talk along with the rest of us in a very genteel way, but somehow you enjoyed it and looked forward to it. Larry, we miss you. Thanks for all the joy, the laughter, the humor, for making Santa Barbara so much better, for making all of us so much better, but mostly just thank you for the blessing of knowing you and having you enrich our lives all these many years. We love you.
I didn't know who Larry was until the day that I met him, and I was 17. I was born and raised in Santa Barbara, but my social standing just never interacted with his, and I got to meet him through Life Chronicles and Kate Carter. It was the first videotaping I'd ever gone on for Life Chronicles. I can honestly say it changed my life, because up until then I hadn't really met anyone like Larry or like Kate. So to have that kind of interactions with them, and at a time in my life where I could have gone in one direction or the other. Yeah, every time I saw Larry, he was always just so encouraging, you know? Like, he'd always say things like, I'm gonna work for you one day, you know, just stuff like that, where like it was a joke, but it was still like really, it was just really flattering from a guy like him to say that, even if it was just a joke, especially someone like me that never really got those kind of things said to me. To think about the things that he had done for this city and for this community that affected me without me even knowing it. You know, that's the part that kind of got me when I first met him, you know, when he was just talking about all the stuff he'd done. And I was just like, inadvertently, I've been affected by you and what you've done. Like, that was a moment where I was like, wow, living a life like that is way more rewarding than anything else I thought at the time was rewarding, you know, and that's what kind of made me want to go in the right direction with my life as opposed to the one that I was living.
Long-term happiness. People as they age are asked, what's the formula for happiness and success? And, I don't think it's something that comes out in, that you can quantify, and even qualifying it's different. And I get, this sounds so Pollyannish, I get so much out of each day. You have to know what happiness is to be happy, and you have to know when it's happening to you. And so many people are either looking intently back or just as intently forward, and they don't know, hey, this is it. Will be the good old days later. What is the basic answer to life? I have no idea. Life, someone said, life is a journey, not a destination. Those of us who are fortunate sometimes don't say it enough. I'm fairly vertical, fairly compos mentis, and some nice things happen to me every day. Well, Jack Benny once said, if I can't take it with me, I'm not going.
Is there a person who's already passed away that if you could bring them back that you would want to take to dinner or go to lunch with or whatever?
I'd like to withhold all those rights until I die and bring myself back. Probably one's real net worth is measured in those people who've been fortunate enough to interact with and working in the charity field. That's where you meet many of nature's noblemen. 10 years from now, my goal is to be 90, which is less than 3 years. So I'm enjoying life, and I hope.
Well, thank you, Larry, for what you taught us about happiness and about friendship and about so many things that were public, but so many things that were very private and personal. And I'm guessing that many of us in the room today have our own private stories to tell about Larry that bring a smile, maybe not a big laugh, but a smile because they touch us so tenderly. And I hope I can do this. Well, you know, Larry was, of course, we've heard about his incredible accomplishments here in Santa Barbara and all the money that he raised and all the fun that he raised. And I think there's one thing that maybe not so many of you knew about, and I think that it's time that you probably heard about one of his incredibly well-developed talents as far as we're concerned, and that was as a shameless yunta. He watched people, he listened to people, and then he did what he could to play Cupid. And if there are others here who have those stories, you know what I mean. He doesn't give up.
That's right. I was at a breakfast event one morning in 23 or 4 years ago, and I was there as the board president of the Transition House, and there were Susan Frischella from Shelter Services for Women was there, and Storyteller was there, and Larry was handing out some recognition plaques and other things, and there was a woman that got up and got a certificate or something. And after we walked out of the La Cumbre Country Club, I said, "Hey, Larry," I said, "who was that woman?" And he said, "Who?" And I tried to describe her. He says, "I don't know." He says, "Why, Michael?" And I said, "Well, Larry, you know, I've been in Santa Barbara single for several years now, and I'd like to meet somebody special." He says, "Really? One person?" I said, "Well, yeah." And Larry said, "You know, Michael, the guys I know like you say, Larry, I'd like to meet one of those and one of those and one of those and one of those." I said, "No, Larry, I'd like to just meet one person." He said, "Well, I know a woman, and in my book," Larry Sports Vernacular, he says, "in my book, she's all world." And Larry made the introduction 23 and a half years ago, and we are together. And thank you very much, Larry, for your introduction. It's been wonderful. I have one other attribute of Larry's that I'd like to talk about. Over the years, Larry would call me and say, "Michael, they need your help on X board or that board." And I'd say, "Larry, I don't contribute anything to the boards. I may have a role in town here, but I'm not like the people that have been around town all the time. I can't write all the big checks." And he said something that nobody said yet today, and it was really a powerful moment. He said, "Michael, the greatest gift you can give other people is their ability to believe in themselves." Thank you, Larry.
I don't take any credit. I'm basically upbeat, and I see the glass is half full. And I think the saving grace for me was humor. I find so much to chuckle about in life. I don't think you can transplant humor in somebody. I wish you could, because it can turn the ordinary into extraordinary. This thread of love, and how you can love without humor, or how you can live without humor, I don't know. Roasting me is becoming a way to celebrate my birthday. So finally I got a chance to answer all these barbs and insults. So as I got up, 200 masks were held up, each one a picture of Larry Crandell. So I ad-libbed, "This is by far the handsomest audience I've ever seen." And then I couldn't stop laughing, and they'd shout, "It's not that funny." Have you told him yet the big secret?
Which one, Larry? It's not a secret if I tell him.
Katie Carter made a deal with the devil by worshiping the devil. She gets to work through considerable pain. She never gets discouraged. She's done 1,000 deals. All this is part of the devil deal. But dealing with the wrong people is right if the end result are positive things. And she creates, in my opinion, a greater difference among us than almost any individual I know. That wherever she goes, she can't help but sell this concept of courage and faith. And so there's a long trail of those of us who have followed and are following in her footsteps. All of this should go up engraved in stone in a prominent place like the
my
Mission.
tombstone.
I wanted to see what he would do when I started talking nonsense.
Nonsense. Oh my God, that's like a knife to the heart. Nonsense.
He handled it
I was
well.
basking, Larry, for a second there.
Pardon?
I was basking for a second there, and then you told me it was, what did you say? It was nonsense.
Oh.
I thought you really meant what you said for a moment.
I did too. I was like going for it. I was like, wow, this is great.
I can teach you how to accept adulation. Standing ovations become routine. Compliments galore. Just people brighten when you approach because they think you might say something clever. Then when you get the reputation for being clever, anything you say counts.
I didn't know the camera was running that day, and I came across this clip recently, and it was just a great example of the banter that would happen with Larry. Larry's been my friend for the past 40 years. When we first met working at the Little Stone Company, unsolicited, he became my advisor and protector. Professionally and personally, he looked out for me. A few years later, when I told him I was engaged, he said, "Who is he?" I thought, he won't know who he is. And I told him who it was, and he says, "Oh, Russ Carter, 6'4", 220, played football for USC." And I'm like, oh my God, he knows everybody and everything about them. And then he asked me if he could walk me down the aisle. Just the week before, when someone had asked me who I would have walk me down the aisle if it wasn't my father, I had said, Larry Crandell. 22 years later, I timidly spoke to Larry about Life Chronicles, and he was so enthusiastic about the idea. While some people didn't quite get what it was about, Larry got it immediately, and shortly after asked why I hadn't asked him to be on our board of directors. Everybody wanted Larry on their board. I couldn't believe he wanted to spend time with a tiny upstart, adding to the hundreds of other nonprofits already in Santa Barbara. But he became my champion. And it's hard to lose your champion. My other champion was Mary Ellen Kelly, who decided that we would meet every month for breakfast with Larry, and she called it the Love Fest for the next 17 years. No agenda, just asking Larry, not asking Larry for anything, just lots of love and laughter. Mary Ellen passed away exactly 15 months to the day before Larry. While they were both 30 years my senior, they allowed me to spend this time with them, though I remember much of it with my chin on my hands, just basking in the magnificence of their banter and wisdom. As you saw in the video, Larry could heap praise and glory and then bring down the hammer with teasing, just to keep you humble. And I loved that about him. In the last couple of years, if you asked Larry how he was doing, the answer was always the same: life is good. And even until the last few months, he would ask me for an update on all things Life Chronicles and follow it with, what can I do to help? Shall I gather some folks at Moby Dick? Shall I ask Tom Parker for some money? He did that every time, I'm telling you, Tom. He did. But I would always tell Larry, it's time to relax and know that you've done more than enough for everyone. You deserve to rest and bask in the love we all have for you. And I want to say to the Crandell family, so many of us loved Larry, and he loved the community, but he was so grateful for his family. We probably know more about than you would imagine about your family because he spoke of you all the time with such pride and such love. With Larry, I always knew I was sitting at the feet of the master of love, laughter, and kindness. Thank you, Larry. You and I would often talk about this day that comes to everyone. I just hope you're holding your mother's hand again and enjoying the love here today. Finally, something I shared recently with Larry. We are the rememberers, the people left behind to keep the one who's gone from us alive in heart and mind, the people left to cherish and preserve a legacy. Yes, we are the rememberers, and we will always remember.
I didn't love them, I enjoyed them. I got from them so much that I had this unreasonable fear that maybe something would happen to me before they reached their majority. And they wouldn't know that the accounts were all in my favor at 13. So I told each one at 13, and each one at 13 cried, and I cried. And I said, if anything happened to me, I want you to know that I've gotten so much more than I could possibly have given. And it was tender.
Is there anything that you'd like to say directly to your family?
Yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And that's just for the children. I'll do a blanket one for the grandchildren and the 2 great-grandchildren. Are we about finished? I don't want to be tired for the Laker game tonight.
We are about finished. By the way, a note about the McGuires who are sitting down here. Thank you so much. One thing you might not know is that every anniversary they would open a bottle of champagne or wine, and the first toast was always to the man who brought them together. And I found that really touching. You know, Marcy once said about Larry, you've heard him speak, obviously, was his great talent, one of them. And someone asked her, you haven't spoken in 10 years. Is there anything wrong? And she said, I just didn't want to interrupt Larry. She was extraordinary. My dad died peacefully on August 30th, a little over 5 weeks ago. He was one of the best talkers I've ever known. Yet in the last days before his death, he managed to bring people together, both friends and family, and people who had only met them through their working role. And he did it without saying a word. I found it wondrous that a time of loss could be so unifying. Leave it to Larry. He lived his extraordinary life with a grace that rose in equal parts from a teasing wit, perfect timing, and one of the most generous hearts I know. I was truly amazed to find that even in death, he was unifying us. And as he said in one of these clips, improving the human condition. It was wonderful. I'm very grateful to the folks from Assisted Hospice who helped us and helped Larry pass in what was truly a beautiful way. My tears came then, and they are about to come now, from a deep sense of gratefulness, deep like the ocean or sky. My parents, Larry and Marcy, taught me what love means, and that is all I've ever needed. Honor to you both, Mom and Dad. I owe my sense of wonder and my sense of humor, indeed, my entire life to you both. I love you, Mom and Dad, and I'm one lucky duck to be your son. At this point, I'm going to test you all, so if you suffer from test anxiety, take a deep breath. You cannot get this question wrong, all right? Just raise your hand, no need to say anything. If you are either a son or a daughter, raise your hand. Some people aren't raising their hands. I think we may have aliens present. No, it's just a little thing. One of the things my dad taught me as a speaker is always to get your audience to do something. And it's kind of what he did when he was fundraising or interacting with people in general. He always got them to engage by asking something of them. And the reason I ask that question is because those of us, not everyone's a parent, but everyone is a child, and no matter what you think of your parents, or even if you didn't know them, we are only here because of our ancestors. And it's not just the parents, it's the grandparents and the great-grandparents, and so far back that none of us can ever remember. And yet, as the Dalai Lama says, it's that love that a mother has when a baby's born and a father has to keep a child alive and loved that in fact continues the whole human race. And Larry just extended that parental love to his other relationships. It was wonderful. So there's going to be more participation for you coming up. I'm sure Larry is watching us now from beyond the veil. I have a strong belief that we are all spirits first and humans second. And as we shuffle this mortal coil, we continue as spirits. And I know he'll be well pleased, ecstatic at the love and attention we give him today, not to mention the laughter and applause, always his drugs of choice. But let's be honest, memorial services are really for the living, not the dead. And Larry knew this better than most. The big question here is not how well we praise Larry, but what we do once we leave this beautiful theater today. I think we should ask ourselves this: how will Larry's life make a difference in the way we live our lives? It's a big question, and it leads to others. What are our takeaways from Larry? What change might he inspire in each one of us? Larry knew that community mattered most, but also that community only thrived if individuals cared enough to make compassion their compass. The two most important powers we possess as human beings are free will and love. Larry's formula was simple. Use the first to choose the second. Think about that. Using our free will to choose love. How would that feel? Not just in those special moments when the love rises to the surface and it's easy to communicate it, but at every opportunity. My father was a master of encouragement. Encouragement, it's a fundamental word to me, one that's worth examining closely. First off, it contains the word courage. Encouragement. Right there, smack in the middle. And we immediately recognize that, yes, it takes a certain kind of social courage to reach out to someone and offer support and affirmation. And if you think that Larry didn't have to exercise that, you're wrong. He, more than anyone, was sensitive to the idea that he might fail. He might reach out and someone might not be interested. He might tell a joke that fell flat. Then further inside that word, courage, we find the French word, le cœur, which means heart. So when we encourage someone, we literally give them heart. Giving heart. It's the ultimate gift, the ultimate empowerment, giving another human being permission to chase his or her purpose, giving them license to honor love above fear. Larry, at his best, was brilliant at giving people heart. And that's what I want to share today. I want to encourage us all to be givers of heart. You see, Larry lives on every time we do this. This is the way we truly honor him. Whenever we manage it, in every relationship, give heart. Now, I want this to be memorable for you, so I'm going to ask you to stand up right now, in body or spirit. So please do. And when I say 1, 2, 3, we're all going to say, give heart. Okay, you ready? Say it with me now. 1, 2, 3, give heart. That was pretty good. Let's do it even louder this time. 1, 2, 3, give heart. Now one more time, and let's raise the roof. 1, 2, 3, give heart. Whew, how did that feel? Nice. You can sit down now. If we remember nothing else about this day or about Larry, I believe we should remember these two words, give heart. I believe that Larry knew that when we're able to do this, our lives grow richer and more enjoyable. And that too was Larry's secret. He gave encouragement because it gave him encouragement. And of course, Larry would say one of the best ways to offer encouragement, especially to a nonprofit, is to give them money. So, and the other thing I learned from him is that if you want people to give, you got to show a good example. So the family has joined together and we decided that this book, some of you already have it, but some of you don't. There are plenty of copies, and if you know someone who will really read it, please take one for them, is out in the foyer. It's also out in the reception area. And in it is a little envelope that looks like this, and you can put money in it. And you can give it to the Larry Crandall Scholarship Fund, which will benefit, in particular, children from single-parent families. Because although my dad's dad was alive, he was in a veterans hospital and wasn't around. And that's why he speaks so fondly of his mother, who, as a single parent, stood up and was there every day for her 3 boys, even though they lived in poverty. Something about that always gets me. So, if you feel so moved, you're welcome. If not, read the book and share his spirit. And even if you give heart to one person today, or the next day, or 3 years from now, it'll be worthwhile. And you'll know that Larry is smiling and knowing that you feel better, even as the other person is lifted up. And after all, that's why we're here. Not to achieve anything, not to make a lot of money, but to lift each other up. It's not judging, it's compassion. And as we do that, we are lifted up. It's incredible. The great advantage of speaking last is you get to run over. And I have. Thank you for your patience and your interest. And at this point, I'd like to invite Tom Reed and Byron Elton, because we're all going to do one more thing together, up to the stage. These are fine musicians, also people who are part of Crandall's Cronies, and my brother Michael to come up here. And the rest of the extended Crandall family, you'll find their names in the program. All of us are here, and yes, there are great-grandchildren, Lois. Wonderful. So please come up, and then we're all going to sing together.
Good job, everybody. We're going to ask you to stand up now, and we're going to sing a song together. It's a song that appropriately is a parody that was written many years ago for a roast of Larry. We thought we'd bring it back. It'll be available on iTunes later today. Also, no royalties are being paid. So please join us in this rendition to the tune of Daisy, Daisy. It's Larry, Larry. There's a brief guitar introduction and then a brief guitar part between each verse. So please join us. Thank you.
Larry, Larry, give us your answer true. You can't wait till a statue is built of you. You've had all the other honors, by now they're mostly yawners. Applause and song won't last as long as the statue that's built for you. Larry, Larry, where would you like it placed? Dolphin Mountain, placed by your smiling face. A copper and bronze memorial, the birds will surely enjoy you. Would be complete with size 12 feet is a statue that's built for you. Larry, Larry, think of the whole effect. Uptown, downtown, how many should we erect? Our totals are looking golden, the CPA's beholden. Because the fair, they wouldn't dare mark a statue or two of you. Larry, Larry, how would you make them black? Mr. Casby, a stander without a sack. When bystanders sip their coffee, they'll know you're not Gaddafi, or Daniel Boone, or Peter Noon, when a statue is built for you.